Hello and welcome to the Divine in Our Time podcast, where we believe that God has not ceased to be a God of miracles. We want to discuss, explore, and share those miracles, both big and small, and we are so happy you're here.
Thank you guys so much for coming on and for doing this with me tonight. I appreciate it. You guys have a book that you've written on grief, or tell me a little bit about the book.
The book, it's called Our Stories. And basically what happened is Melissa and I, we were experiencing the same loss with Ethne, our daughter, but we were both grieving in different ways.
Yeah.
And a lot of the books that we were being given by people about grief were written by women. And Melissa tended to connect with them more, but I don't know if it's just a male-female thing or different for whatever reason. I just wasn't connecting with them. I found other books that weren't grief-related that I connected with and that helped me out. But we noticed as we look at it that there's a big gap in men's stories in dealing with grief.
Yeah.
And I mean, there was a lot more to our story even beyond that. We talk about life events that happened before and then since as well.
Tell me about yourselves a little bit.
So I'm Melissa Stone, and this is my husband, Lawrence Stone. And we just celebrated our 17th anniversary together. We met when we were in college, working at Walmart, of all places. And about a year and a half after we got married, we had our first daughter, Ethne. Perfect little redhead, blue eyes. She was such a spunky little girl, and she loved everyone. And then when she was about a year old, we moved to Utah, and I was pregnant with our second. His name is Edward. And when she was just over 2 years old, we were in a car accident. I was T-boned by a cement truck. And after the accident, Ethne and I were both life-flighted to the hospital. And Edward went in an ambulance. He had a few stitches in his head, was kept overnight for observation, and checked out the next day like nothing had happened. Unfortunately, Ethne did not make it. And I required surgery. Essentially, the whole left side of my body was a hot mess. I had several broken bones. I had to have a splenectomy. And I was in the hospital for about a week following the accident. After the accident, we waited about a week. So it was almost 2 weeks after the accident before we held Ethne's funeral. And I honestly don't remember much of it because I was on some pretty heavy medications. Mm-hmm. But I do remember that there were so many people there to support us. And we went. Mm-hmm. I was told that there was a line like around the building. Is that right?
Yeah, they couldn't even get everybody through. They had to cut off the line at some point because there was just like it was practically going out the door.
I love that for you.
Yeah.
And the chapel and the overflow were filled. It was the amount of support that we received was really incredible. At the time, I was working as a band teacher at a local charter school. And while I was in the hospital, I was on a team, and one of my co-teachers brought these just lovely cards from my students. That it was really meaningful to have these sweet students send me all these cards. That we actually wound up using a poem that one of my students wrote on the program for the funeral.
Oh.
And the students they were really sweet. If I hadn't been working that job, there were a lot of blessings that came from my association with that school and working that job.
Well, I mean, with the student teaching job that you had before that too.
Yeah. So the school that I was working at and the school night student taught out partnered together to hold a huge fundraiser for us to help cover funeral expenses and medical expenses and things.
Oh.
And looking back, it's just such a blessing that we were able to be associated with these wonderful communities and these wonderful schools that
with both pools of people that really helped you get through it.
Honestly, I had hoped not have to work, but financial situations were such that I worked, and it was really part-time, but the job kind of fell onto my lap. It was, it all lined up perfectly that I wound up getting that job. I was looking for something really part-time, hoping to find something in teaching because that's what I had studied in music education. And I just got onto a website for teacher jobs and saw the job, and I knew the school. I had friends who had sent their children to that school. And so when I went in using some of those friends as referrals, they were really excited that I knew people who was familiar with the school and were excited to put me in there with the team of teachers that I was working with.
How many part-time jobs are there available for a teacher? It feels like that would be like no job at all for part-time.
There just really aren't a lot of part-time teaching jobs available. And it really did feel like it had just all lined up perfectly.
It was everything you wanted at the time and even more later.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. I love it.
And again, it's interesting because some of the things that she observed that I hadn't observed, but I certainly saw things in my life as well that were preparing me. One of the things when we first got to Utah, I was trying to build my own insurance agency. And, I was looking, I wanted to make sure I was doing all the right things. That I'm right out of school. We're graduating in a down economy. And so I got a job trying to build my own insurance agency, and that wasn't going well. But as I was trying to build it, I was just trying to find anything I could do where I could get God's help in getting there. And the Oak Mountain Temple had opened not too much previous to that. And they said they needed ordnance workers. And so I said to Melissa, I want to be an ordnance worker. And so for about a year and a half, up till about a month before the accident, I was an ordnance worker at the Oak Mountain Temple. And having that consistency of going to the temple every week and being there and meditating and praying was important. But just having that preparation, I didn't realize it until I looked back a little while later that I was really being prepared for what we were going to go through by having that consistent attendance at the temple. That it was, spiritually bracing me. And I feel like when Ethne died, I could hold my composure better. I felt like I was hyper focused on the things that I needed to do. And I even look back on my life previously, there were so many experiences that I had that these lessons I had learned that had come back to me. So for example, my sophomore year in high school, first day of school, I had a cousin who died in a car accident.
Okay.
And we were the same age. We were close friends. Obviously, it hit me pretty hard. That was the first real significant death of someone who wasn't an older person in my life.
Yeah.
And it was interesting at the hospital after Ethne died. Melissa's family's all down in Utah. My family's all up in Idaho.
Mm-hmm.
I knew my parents were on their way down. I knew it'd be about a 3.5 hour drive, assuming my dad didn't go too crazy on the gas.
Yeah.
And
it should have been a 3.5 hour drive.
Right. Should have been a 3.5 hour drive. And all of a sudden, I get a phone call that this aunt and uncle of this cousin that had passed away just happened to be driving and passing the exit that they needed to go to pull off to go to Primary Children's, heading back home to Idaho.
Oh, wow.
And so they were my first family members at the hospital. And it really meant a lot to me.
That gives me chills.
Yeah. And then it was perfect timing. It was a neat moment to have them there, that they were the first ones to show up. If my family couldn't be there, then have them right there was really a big deal for me.
About all the family, the ones that have probably had the closest experience.
And I remember, because when Ethne was still alive when I got the phone call. So after Melissa had the accident, someone had called me who was behind her. We never got the person's name, but Melissa was awake. She gave him my phone number. He called me and he said, Melissa's okay. Our son's okay. Edward was okay. He was crying. Melissa was talking. Ethne was unresponsive. And so I kind of panicked, like, well, is she still alive? And he said, I don't know. And the longest 10-second pause of my life happened right there before he finally said, she's breathing.
So you're at work when you got this call?
So I had actually gotten home about 2 minutes before.
Okay, so you had just gotten home from work and you got a call from a stranger telling you that everybody's been in a car crash.
Yeah.
Did he tell you they got hit by a cement truck?
Yes.
Ugh.
And so I head over there, and as I'm driving over there, I'm saying all these prayers in my heart that everyone's going to be okay. I felt confident that Melissa and Edward were going to be okay. It was mostly Ethne I was worried about. And I was like, I should call people. And then the second thought in my head is, well, you don't want to burden them with this. Let's wait and see what happens. And then you can call them. And then the very next thought was, well, you need as many people praying for your family as possible right now.
Yep.
So you have to tell them.
Yep.
And so I started making the phone calls right then and there. And Melissa's mom actually ended up meeting me at the accident. We ended up driving to the hospital together. A lot of things kind of lined up. Melissa and Anthony, like I said, were taking my wife to the hospital, but Anthony died shortly after arrival.
Months, almost a year after the accident, we actually stumbled upon a private message that was sent to Lawrence on Facebook Messenger from
Someone who's on the lifeline.
one of the med techs that was on the life flight.
Okay.
And he talked about how he had given Anthony a blessing that she would at least make it to the hospital, and just how he had sacred experiences in that helicopter with her.
Yeah, I mean, they said there was a series of miracles that allowed her to get there, and I think it was important that she got there because it kept us calm and hopeful until I could arrive at the hospital.
Yeah.
And then, because shortly after I arrived, that's when the doctors came out and told me that she had passed.
Oh.
I recalled another time when I was younger, there was a classmate who died in a car accident, and my mom was talking to me about it later on, when everyone was watching what the parents of this young man were going to do. And my mom was telling me everyone was watching because an accident, the loss of a child, will either make or break your marriage.
Yep.
And so I was reflecting on that, and I said, in that moment, I resolved, this is going to make my marriage. It's not going to break it. And shortly after, moments after I heard that Ethne passed, my focus went from, okay, now Ethne's gone. I need to help Melissa recover.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, I just kind of transitioned to that. And I think in some ways I didn't grieve as much as I could have, or some of the grief hit me later on because of that.
Yeah.
Because the focus just became, I need to take care of Melissa. But at the same time, when Melissa was asleep or in a coma for a lot of that time, I found myself reintroduced to journaling. Journaling became a big deal for me. Journaling, prayer, and meditation, I say that in the next 3 to 6 months after the accident, I learned more about who I was as a dad, as a husband, as a child of God, as a member of my community, and about the next life than I had in my entire life combined up to that point. Because of that opportunity to reflect and to meditate and to journal. Like I just, and that's what I talk about journaling, is I have these random puzzle pieces out there of what's going on in the gospel. And all of a sudden when I started journaling, these pieces started coming together and I could see the bigger picture. I could see what was going on. And that journaling really helped me out quite a bit as I was dealing with my grief.
So as you're driving to the hospital, first off, Melissa's going to a different hospital than your 2 children. Is that right? How far away is the hospital from Primary Children's that she's going to?
So
it lined up perfectly. They told him at the scene that it was between 2 helicopters, whichever one got there first. One would take me to LDS hospital, which was kind of across town from Primaries, or one could take me to the U of U hospital, which is across the street from Primaries, and there's a bridge that connects the 2.
Like a walkway.
A walkway, yes. And the U of U helicopter made it there first. So I wound up at the hospital across the street from Primary Children's.
Again, like such a tender mercy that, like, I can't imagine your stress level, Lawrence, as you're driving down with your whole family in the hospital. How long of a drive is that for you?
It was about 45 minutes.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
So what were your thoughts, Lawrence, as you're driving down there? And Melissa, are you just are you unconscious on your life flight, or where are you at on this?
The only thing I remember after the accident is talking to the emergency medical people about my kids, asking them how my kids are, and then I think feeling a little frustrated that I wouldn't answer their questions until they told me that my kids were more or less okay. But then I was unconscious, and the next thing I remember is waking up with a tube down my throat.
Okay. And your daughter passed away basically right when she got there. Is that my understanding?
She coded 2 times in the CT machine, and after the second time was when they called it.
So Lawrence, like, you're about little kids and CT machines and coming out of surgeries. It's just so hard. It's so hard when they're so little. Okay, so Lawrence, you're driving and you're praying and you're whatever. Were there any like feelings or impressions as you're driving? Like, is this going to be okay? I don't know what that means or what that looks like, or were you just panicked, or where were you mentally and spiritually as you're making that 45-minute drive down to see your family?
So it was actually my mother-in-law is the one that drove.
Okay.
She insisted on driving because she was worried about me. I was worried about all the people she was texting while we were going down the road. Yes. But it's interesting because I found myself.
Lawrence thought he was going to be in the hospital next to you, Melissa.
I was a little worried about it. But yeah, it's interesting. I actually was very calm, and I felt like I was very hyper focused. Like I just knew what I needed to do next.
Is that out of character for you?
Yeah, I'm not a hyper focused person. I am a dreamer. I am an imaginer. I am scatterbrained and forgetful. But yeah, in this moment, I was very like, okay, I know what's going to be okay. I know what I need to worry about. I know what I need to do next.
So then you got there and the doctor came out and told you that your daughter had passed away, and you kind of immediately went from, okay, just we're full on with Melissa. And Melissa, how long were you in the hospital then?
For about a week. The accident was on a Tuesday, and I was released from the hospital the following Monday.
Isn't that wild that you can get your whole side smashed by a truck and they send you home 6 days later?
There were a lot of tender mercies that way too. I had to have a splenectomy, broken ribs. I had pelvic fractures in 3 places, and they wouldn't extubate me because they thought maybe I'd have to have surgery on my pelvis. And they decided, I had an aneurysm on my carotid. And they finally decided to extubate me. But I remember waking up. I mean, talk about ways that we were prepared when we were younger. When I was in elementary school, I was introduced to American Sign Language, and I actually studied it all through high school. I was fluent in it. And so when I woke up intubated, I was still able to communicate.
Oh my goodness.
And he has rudimentary ASL skills.
I could spell.
He can finger spell
most of the alphabet.
And so I was able to communicate with my ASL, and I remember having the same conversation over and over and over every time I kind of come out of it. And one question that I consistently remember asking was, how are the kids? How is Edward? And Lawrence would always tell me, Edward is good. Edward is fine. He's healthy. He's happy. He's with your brother. And then when I'd ask him about Ethne, he'd tell me that she was safe. And I knew what that meant.
I didn't want to tell her that Ethne had died until the kid removed the tube, because I wanted her to be able to talk and ask questions, and I wanted that communication to be available. When I told her, we didn't want to have everyone around when she found out. I remembered I had an aunt and uncle at a stillbirth, and I remember my mom giving them a card with a picture of Jesus holding an infant, and thinking, if I could find that.
Is it the one that's on? I have a Facebook page, and it's probably the exact same picture. It's almost like a side profile of Jesus.
It's like a pencil sketch.
Yes.
Yes.
I love it. That's on my Facebook page. That's with my little thing. It's one of my main pictures because I love it so much. My mom gave it to me when I had my daughter. Mm-hmm. And yes, it's precious.
Yes.
Okay,
So I asked my parents to go find me that one. And unfortunately, they couldn't find it, but they did find some others of Jesus with little children. And so I picked out a couple of them that I liked. And Melissa's mom insisted on being there as well.
Well, and another thing was, I'm in the ICU, like top level ICU.
Yeah. And
like no kids allowed.
Yeah.
But they let Edward come up and let me have it on the bed with me when Lawrence told me.
Yeah, so we had Edward there too. And that's when we told her that Ethne had died. And, she'd suspected, but that was when she officially knew. She didn't have a lot of questions that I recall. But
what were your feelings, Melissa? I mean, you kind of had an inkling anyway because he kept saying that she was safe. So, but like when that actual blow came, how was that for you? Like, what were your feelings?
I mean, I was devastated.
Yeah.
I was scared. I was scared for my marriage. I was scared for the future. I was worried about what other people were going to think of me because I had been driving that car and I felt so much guilt
Yeah.
that I had survived, that I hadn't been there for her. And it felt like it was my fault.
Yeah. So you felt a lot of fear when you found out, like, what does this mean for my future?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even before Lawrence had told me, when I woke up, I could feel the staples down my stomach. I have an incision from my sternum to my pubic bone because you go into that, they don't know what's bleeding.
Yeah.
They just cut it open.
Yep.
And a few years prior, a friend of ours had gone in to have exploratory surgery to see what, because she had cancer, and they were trying to figure out where the tumors were and everything. And she came out of that surgery and had a complete hysterectomy, and how devastated she was. And that was one of my first thoughts as I went to, what did they take? What, you know, am I able to still have kids after this? How is this going to affect me physically as much as my worries about emotionally and spiritually and everything else?
Well, it's kind of amusing when talking about the sign language, because she was worried about this. She kept signing about having another baby, and I was like, "You just were in an accident. Let's put this conversation on hold." And finally, it was her mother
Put a pin in that.
yeah, like it was her mother that picked up on. No, she wants to know if it's still possible to have another baby. If I like, it didn't even dawn on me. I didn't even know if I knew the story about the hysterectomy. He probably told me and I just forgot about it. But it was just like, we don't need to have another baby right now. We can wait on
That's
this.
hilarious that like it was so far off your brain that even though she kept saying it, it still didn't register that she's going, can we someday?
Yeah, yeah. Her mom finally figured it out, but I was like, oh, okay. Now I'm on the same page.
Well, so at the time I was still nursing Edward. He was
7
he
months
was
old.
and my mom was kind of by my side the whole time while Lawrence was over dealing with the kids. And when I came out of surgery, she looked at the nurses and said, "She's still nursing. I need a pump." And so the nurses went and got her a pump from the maternity ward. And they said, "There's a fat chance she's going to keep her milk supply. Like, this isn't going to work."
Well, I think it was especially the doctors were like, "Don't worry about it." But it was important, and that the nurses were that advocate that helped us out.
And so they brought a pump, and it was a miracle that I kept my milk supply, and I had to pump and dump for almost 3 weeks
Because of all the meds.
and the antibiotics and everything. But I managed to keep my milk supply, and Edward went right back to it when.
It really is just insane. It's insane that you kept it through not even the mental stress and the agony and all the things, but the physical stress on your body. Like,
yeah. And being able to go back to nursing him
was so healing, I bet.
It was. It really, really was.
Like such a blessing that you didn't know you needed.
Yeah.
And way to go for your mom too, to like care and even think about that.
Yeah. And I had women by my side the whole time that helped me pump, because like you can't hold it all at the same time. And I was tied up with IV poles. And so that they were willing to help with that was a blessing.
Wow. What kind, like women from church, or what do you mean? Or did you have
My
family?
mother-in-law, my sister-in-law, sisters-in-law, all of them.
So like a bunch of family would come in and help you with that.
Yep.
Oh, that is really nice. Okay, so we get out of the hospital, we have our funeral. Did you ever have any more children?
Yes.
Yeah.
How many more babies?
4.
It was a struggle deciding to have more babies.
Yes, because you've been crushed and like it's hard to love again, right? Like,
yeah. It was a few months later when I came to him, I said, I just don't know. And he said, "There's more children for our family."
Basically, kind of the way I put it is I said, look, if God wanted us to have kids bad enough, then it could still potentially happen. But here's the thing I want you to kind of think about is I believe that there's other kids out there that need to be a part of our family. And I said, yes, Ethne had passed away, but because we're married in the temple, because of that sealing, we will get to be with her again. And I had this fear of these other kids who were supposed to be part of our family, that if we never had them, then we would never get to be with them. And at some point in the next life, they would come to us and say, we were supposed to be part of your family and we're not because you chose not to have us. And that was something for me that I wasn't sure I was going to be able to handle because, you know, and I told Melissa, like, even if we lost them, I wanted them to be a part of our family. And I knew that was her biggest fear is I don't want to lose more children. I can't go through that again.
Yeah.
And so I basically said, you know, and I also knew Melissa. When we first got married, she was saying 2 to 3 years down the road after we get married, we'll have kids. And I was thinking 1 year, but I was like, I'm not going to worry about it because I know her and she's going to get baby hungry within about a year. And so I'll win anyway. And then like 4 months after we get married, she's like, I think I want to have a baby now. And I'm like, no, this is not the plan that we had at all.
You're like,
And so,
too hard. I mean, it's too hard.
So I knew that at some point she might come back and say, I want to have kids. And so I knew I just needed to be patient with that. But when she asked me my thoughts on why I wanted to have kids, I told her, like, these are my reasons.
So a little over a year after the accident, I got pregnant with our third. We had a baby boy and he was born in December of 13.
Yep, he was planned too. Melissa said that she was ready at that point.
Yeah. And when he was born, I'm one of those, I hate being in the hospital, especially after my accident. And I want to leave as soon as I can.
Yeah.
And so when I had Edward, I was out 24 hours.
Okay.
So when Joseph was born, 24 hours hit, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go home. Let's check me out. And my doctor was like, yeah, you're all good. You can go home. And the pediatrician came in and said, that kid hasn't had a poopy diaper yet. You can't leave.
Okay.
Take him home. And I was a little crushed and very upset. And then it turned out that he had a birth defect that didn't allow him to have stool. And so then we wound up back at primaries. And that brought back all sorts of things.
What did he have?
He has a condition called Hirschsprung's disease.
Okay.
So it's where the nerves that create peristalsis don't form to the bottom of the colon and into the rectum. And so stuff just doesn't move through. And they have to remove the diseased part of the colon. So he's missing a third of his large intestine.
Or 2 surgeries by the time he was 6 months old.
Yeah.
Does he have a colostomy or does he
He had a colostomy for a few months when he was an infant. That was a huge learning curve.
Yeah.
Dealing with that. And to a certain extent, I felt like when he was in the hospital and we were dealing with all of that, I felt like, so Lawrence carried me for that first at least year after Effie passed away. And he really, really did. And I feel like when Joseph and when we were dealing with everything with Joseph, in a way, I was carrying Lawrence.
Yep.
He carried a lot of blame on himself for that because it turned out that the condition it can be genetic and it came through his line.
Yeah, we'd never even heard of it. And then all of a sudden we find out that I have an uncle who had it, and he was actually the surgery they were performing on Joseph. He was like one of the case studies for it. Well, the first ones to get the surgery. And so that's on my dad's side. Then I find out that my mom even had a couple of cousins, at least one of whom had passed away as an infant from this because of Hirschsprung's disease. And there's still kids, if they go undiagnosed, there's still kids that die from it today because it does go to undiagnosed sometimes.
Yeah.
So what a blessing that your pediatrician was like, yeah, no.
She was a rock star.
She was really on top of it.
Okay, so when you decided to have a baby, when you did, I don't want to say come around, but when you decided to have a baby, was it like a strong spiritual thing, like you need to do this, or this is God's will, or was it just like, okay, I feel like I should do this again?
It was more of an I feel like I should do this again.
When Joseph has this thing in your back, are you just going back to the hospital going, what in the world? Like, where are you? Right?
And there were so many people when we started sharing what was going on with Joseph. So many people were like, haven't you guys had enough? Is it caught down with you guys? Like, from my experience in the hospital, after my accident, I kind of learned how to advocate for myself. My mom was doing more of the advocating for me when that was the case, when I was in that hospital. But I learned through her how to kind of advocate for myself. And when our son was in the NICU, he was in the NICU for 2 weeks, and they kept telling me, oh, well, he'll gain weight better when you take him home. He'll gain weight better when you take him home. But then they didn't want to let him go until he gained a certain amount of weight. And finally, I looked at them and I said, here's the deal. Let me go home, discharge him, or I'm going AMA. And so they kind of put a whole lot of restrictions on it. They sent home health to check on me. He's like, yeah, he looks good. He's gaining the weight that we wanted him to gain. You've got this, and left. And the pediatrician was really great. She's, they made me take him to the pediatrician and get weighed too, like 2 days later. And she said, yeah, he looks good. You're good. We'll stay on top of this, but I'm not worried.
Yeah. Once again, you had kind of been prepared to do this.
Yeah.
Even though that preparation sucked, like preparation always does.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have Joseph, and then about 2.5 years later, we have our daughter Afton.
Okay. I have a little niece named Afton.
When Afton was about 15 months old, we found out I was pregnant again. And I was about 13, 14 weeks along, and I had a dream that I'd gone in for the whole big gender ultrasound, that one, and they couldn't find a heartbeat. Mm-hmm. And that really rattled me, and it stuck with me for like a couple weeks. The Friday before, so my ultrasound was supposed to be Monday, and the Friday before my ultrasound, I just had this overwhelming feeling that something wasn't right. And the more pregnancies you have, the more familiar you become with the sensations and different things. And I had felt this baby kick. I felt those flutters, and I wasn't feeling them anymore, and hadn't in several days. And so I called my OB's office, and they reluctantly said, yeah, you can come in. They were like, why not wait till your appointment on Monday? It's not a big deal. And I just kept saying, something's not right. So I went in. It was near close, and I got an OB that didn't know me, wasn't familiar with my history, didn't know anything about me. And he came in and downplayed the whole thing. It's really early to be feeling movement. I highly doubt that you were ever feeling movement. I think you're just up in the night. You're just paranoid, but we'll check anyways. The ultrasound tech was really, really sweet, really kind, and I knew immediately. She started looking, because we had seen and heard a heartbeat previously. And as soon as she put that one on there was nothing. I knew. And she wouldn't say anything because I'm not supposed to. And so she went and got the doctor, and the doctor came in, and I kind of had a little bit of an outburst. I just yelled, I can't do this again. I can't, not again, not another one. I can't do this again.
Okay.
And just started sobbing. And
I thought you meant you yelled at the doctor because.
No, I didn't yell at the doctor. I wanted to. I was 18 weeks at this point, and he kept telling me how rare this was. How rare it was to have a loss between 14 and 18 weeks, because actually it is. It's like 1%.
Yeah.
And he's like, I doubt this. I doubt that's what's going on. I doubt that's what's going on. This is so rare. This is so rare. This isn't going to happen to you. And so after the ultrasound, they determined that there was no heartbeat. They took me to a private room, and the doctor came, and I said, so what are my options? And he said, we need to decide if you're having a DNC or if you're going to do this other thing, but you need to decide. And I was like, what is the other thing? And so I went home, and when I kind of had my head screwed on straight, I called my uncle, who's an OBGYN, and I asked him, what are my options here? And so he was very kind and explained either I could be induced and deliver the baby, and that way I had something that we could bury if we wanted to do that, or I could.
Plus, it's better on your body to induce and have a dead baby than to do the DNC.
Yeah. Or I could do the DNC, and I would be out. There would be no remains. And so I opted to deliver the baby. I went in late Saturday night to deliver him. My nurse was so kind, and she was such a tender mercy. They could put me in a room away from all the moms who were delivering live babies. Mm-hmm. And my nurse stayed through shift change to be with me.
Oh, that's really sweet. That was really sweet.
Yeah. And the doctor that delivered him was the same doctor that had delivered Afton. So he kind of knew, he wasn't my regular OB, but he kind of knew a little bit about my history. The nurse was really, really kind. We were able to hold him and spend several hours with him. We had a very, very dear friend come and take pictures for us. And then some women from Share Parents came and they took mold of his hands and feet for us. They left us with little tiny teddy bears for our other kids. And then Lawrence and my dad were able to give him a blessing. And we named him Thomas Scott. Scott after my dad. And then he was sent to the mortuary, which was the same mortuary that handled Ethne. So our daughter is buried, Ethne is buried in Herman, Utah, and the water table there is kind of high, and so they typically won't stack graves there. But because Thomas's casket was so tiny, they were willing to stack him on top of her.
Now, real quick, for people that don't know, you can have up to 2 bodies usually in one hole. Is that right?
Yes.
In
So,
many cases,
Many
yes.
places, yes.
Yeah, so that's what they're talking about here with this. I know that there are limits for
Yeah.
how many you can do,
Yeah.
at least nowadays. So, okay. But it's one of the few areas of Utah where you could stack it. Is that what you're telling me?
No, you can't.
They
They
don't
don't
stack
stack there because the
They
water
don't stack
table.
even too deep.
Yeah,
Okay.
they didn't stack too deep, but they made an exception for us with Ethne and Thomas.
Because his casket was it was so tiny.
So small.
So we were able to stack them. And so that was really a tender mercy that they were willing to make that exception for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry you had to go through this. That's brutal.
So about 6-8 months after losing Thomas, about 8 months, we decided that we were going to move to Idaho from Utah. And it was a process, and it took about another 8 months from when we decided to when we actually got moved. And
Why did you move from Utah to Idaho? Because Idaho doesn't have some great children's hospital.
so his dad had started a business in car restoration and sales. He was kind of floundering a little bit in his business, and Lawrence had management experience and car sales experience and things that could really help his dad.
And listen to my dad talk about his business. All of a sudden, I'm like, he really needs help. Like he didn't say anything disappointing. He was always very excited and enthusiastic about how exciting things were going. But all I can hear is these things like, well, we need help with this. We need help with that. And I can do this. And I know how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I pitched to Melissa, said, I think we need to consider moving back to Idaho. Because like all of her family's down in Utah. She doesn't want to leave.
Well, the
But-
baby's graves are in Utah.
Yep.
Yes. And that was the
That
big
was the
thing.
big
That was the big
That
one
is
for
the big
sure.
thing.
But it was interesting because she wasn't actually completely closed-minded to it. She kind of looked at me and she's like, okay. And she said, I've been feeling like there needs to be a big change in our life, but I don't know what it is. Maybe this is it.
Well, 2 weeks later,
Yeah. 2 weeks later, I had a cousin who committed suicide.
Oh.
And so we're back in Idaho again.
and on the drive back, like as we crossed the Utah border, I just had this overwhelming feeling that we weren't going home, that we were leaving home.
Isn't that weird when that transitions, when like home is no longer home? And
Yeah.
huh.
And so we started preparing our house to move.
I even told her, don't even think about it when we're up there for the funeral, because we're still going to be coming back in a couple of weeks. Like that's not the purpose of this trip. We're just coming up, going to the funeral. We're going to go back home the next day. But yeah,
That's what it was. And I couldn't deny that was what I was feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So about 8 months later, we had moved. And in the intervening months between when we decided we were moving and when we moved, I kind of started softening to the idea that maybe there was one more baby for us. That maybe it was I should consider the possibility of having another baby. And it wasn't for another year that we decided to get pregnant. We were moved to Idaho. We'd been here for several months. But I went to Lawrence and I said, I think maybe it's time to maybe try again. And if it happens, it happens. And if it doesn't, then I guess that's our answer. And it happened. He was born in May of 2020. And I don't know that if we had stayed in Utah, I don't know that we would have had him, that we would have him. Just because of some things that came up with my family, and my mom's health was really declining, and I'm a helper, I'm an empath.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I would have been as open or as willing to consider having.
Because you would have been so overwhelmed with all the other things that, like, the thought of one more baby is just no.
Yep.
So you really needed to move to Idaho to be like, okay, let's do this.
Let's do this. And he's such a blessing, and I am so grateful that we have him.
Girl, you're a rock star. Look at you. Accidents, disabilities, and all this stuff, and you keep having babies. You're going to heaven. Lawrence, you better be hanging on to her shirt tail.
So driving and kicking and screaming, she has to.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay, so first off, like I kind of am just blown away right now at your courage to just like keep pushing forward, especially after Thomas. Like, it's one thing to lose Ethne and then to have the issues with Joseph and then Thomas. Like, I just can't even. I can't. That anyway. You're a rock star for real.
Some days you just look up and like, what else am I gonna do? You just
When I told Lawrence that I thought maybe we were going to have another baby, he looked at me and he said, here's the deal. You have to be prepared that if something does happen in this pregnancy, that if you lose this baby, because he dragged me kicking and screaming some days after Ethne. He pulled me along, and same after Thomas. He was there some days.
When you say he dragged you, when he dragged you kicking and screaming, are you talking like
sometimes going to church?
Going to church, reading
even
the
praying. Like,
Even praying.
it probably took a couple of weeks after Thomas died before I could get Melissa to say a prayer with me. Like, it was, she would pray with me as long as I said the prayer, but she refused for a few weeks.
Because you're so angry.
Right before the accident, our ward got split.
Oh,
And we were put, it gets better, like that Sunday, right before the accident.
okay.
And we were put in a brand new ward with a brand new bishop. And we were living in an apartment complex.
No.
There were some low income people.
No.
And so they split our complex up between 2 or 3 different wards, and they put us in this brand new ward, brand new bishop, all these people we didn't know. And so here he is, 2 days on the job, and he's been thrown into this huge thing.
Tragic thing that most bishops will never have to deal with.
With his
And
family.
And most Relief Society presidents, he probably didn't even have his presidencies put together yet.
Yeah. And so our bishop from our previous ward really was there every step of the way. They held the funeral at our previous ward building. They and both wards came together to help bring us the sacrament when I still wasn't okay to go to church. And I spent a week at my parents' house, and then we went back to our apartment, and I couldn't lift Edward. I had a neck brace. I was, all the things that I couldn't lift Edward. I was using a walker to walk, and he had to go to work early in the morning. And so, bless these women's heart from our Relief Society, they would come over at 5:30 in the morning and sit with me until my mom could come and pick me up to take me to her house to be supervised all day with my baby. And
Just so they could bring Edward to you when he was crying and put him on your chest to feed and all the things.
Yep. And they would sit full laundry with me. My aunt took a week off work and spent a week with us, helping make meals and clean our apartment. You have to look for the helpers. It's like they say, when things happen, you look for the helpers, and there were so many helpers. Our 2 wards and our stick came together and put on a massive bake sale that they didn't want us to know about.
We accidentally found out about it the day before.
Yeah. And so many businesses and stuff from the community donated to the bake sale, and it was amazing. And then, like I mentioned, the school I worked for put together a huge fundraiser. And
it was difficult for me, and I think this is again kind of one of the differences with our stories is they came to us and they said, we want to do this fundraiser for you, but only if you say it's okay. And here I am conflicted because I need to be independent and I need to take care of this, and I need
I'm the provider.
Yeah, and a few months previous, I had walked away from the insurance agency I was trying to build because we weren't making money financially. We were just struggling. And we were thinking about how can we come up with money to replace the vehicle we're driving. And then Melissa has the accident in the other vehicle that we're not planning on getting rid of. And so now it's like we might need to replace 2 cars, and we don't know how we're going to be sitting with all these medical expenses. And so I'm having these conflicting things of I need to do this on my own. I need to take care of my family and be independent. And it's on the side saying there's no way. And eventually just kind of that thought came to my head of don't begrudge these people blessings that they need in their lives by the opportunity of helping you. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of finally like, okay, we need the help. They need the blessings for helping us. I need to allow this to happen. I need to not fight it.
It's a very hard, humbling spot to be in. It's hard because like you want the help, but it's hard because you don't want the help. And it's the same thing with like wanting to go hang out with friends, right? Like you want to be asked about Ethne, you want to talk about her, but also I don't want to talk about her. But if nobody asks me about her, I'm going to feel bad. Like nobody remembers my daughter, but I don't want to talk about her. So it's a very tricky spot. It's a tricky spot to navigate as the person and as somebody on the outside trying to, there's no, I don't know, at least I feel like there's no right or wrong way, as long as the intentions are good. But when you're the one receiving the, whatever it is, intentions or the comments, it could be, you have to be humble there too, right? And just like, mean it like that and give a lot of grace.
Yeah. And there's been a lot of comments from people, and we've had to learn to give grace and to forgive. And the forgiving went a lot of ways. We had family members tell us that we were doing it wrong.
Doing what wrong?
Grieving wrong. And
how many babies had they buried?
0.
Oh, okay.
And tell us that we were depriving our son of things when we didn't want to do certain things because we were grieving. And we had to learn to forgive, but I also had to learn to forgive myself. And there are days when I feel like I'm still working on that.
Yeah. But I'm really glad that you guys have each other. I'm really glad because she's grieving one way, I'm grieving another. But like you guys are going through this, you're both the only people that are going to know as close as possible besides Christ what the other's going through. And there's like such a, I don't want to say trauma bond because it's such a negative. Yeah, but it's such a negative connotation, but it really is a trauma bond. Like nobody gets it the way Lawrence is ever going to get it and vice versa. And even he's not going to get it all the time, right? Like the same way that he doesn't understand you all the time. And there's really like, it reminds me of that triangle, right? As we both turn to Christ, as we all turn to Christ to try healing, we're going to get closer to each other. But I feel like big trials, these Fridays and Thursdays and Gethsemanes that you have to do before you get to your Sunday are lonely, just like Christ, right? He was by himself and everybody fell asleep, and it feels so lonely because nobody gets it. Not even my husband, not even my wife. And it's just a lonely spot to be sometimes. So I don't know how people do it without a helpmate. Like, I don't know how. And to your point too, the dragging, right? Like sometimes it's you going, no, God loves us, Lawrence. I know he's there. And sometimes it's Lawrence going, no, Melissa, God loves us. I know he's there.
Oh, yeah.
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 So Lawrence, as far as you grieving and things like that, what were the differences then between the two of you as far as the grief process goes? Like, was it just different stages at different times or like, how did that go? What was the difference then that you've noticed that you're going, there's a void in the market for how to help? What is that?
Well, I know for me, a lot of it, like I mentioned before, was journaling and taking that time to reflect and meditate. And I know, especially at first, that was a struggle for Melissa because of her injury. She couldn't read and write for very long. And so that was a big one up front. For me, a lot of it is I wanted to do that privately. Like I even struggled to do it in front of Melissa. I really trained hard to not cry in front of Melissa. But if I did cry in front of anyone, it was Melissa, and I definitely made sure I wasn't crying in front of anyone else. Like Melissa was the only one I could safely do that, but I would still fight against that.
Is that like a masculine thing, or is that like I don't want to be a further burden on Melissa and bring her down?
I think it's both. Yeah, both for sure. And because I needed to make sure that Melissa was taken care of, and it's interesting. I talked about it how I feel like I didn't really start breaking down and grieving the way I needed to for almost a year and a half or so later. By the time Melissa was finally getting to a point where she was starting to get a little bit more stable, all of a sudden it's like I had breathing room, and I could start grieving. But even right at the beginning, like for example with Ethne's funeral, I needed to be involved, and so I told Melissa I'm going to be speaking at Ethne's funeral. I needed, and again, coming back to church, our bishop came to us and said, whenever you're ready for a calling, you let me know and we'll figure something out. And I said, sign me up right now. And it was interesting that they put me in as a Sunday school teacher, which was like my favorite calling because I love teaching and I love instructing. And so it was just, felt like a good progression for me. That helped me. I dove into a lot of reading, a lot of books, listened to a lot of podcasts, especially church related podcasts. And I found myself quite studious at that point, wanting to figure things out. I mentioned a lot of the grief books that people gave us, I wasn't really connecting with, but I found other church-related books that I was connecting with more. And even when I was a kid, I always liked biographies. So, like Spencer W. Kimball's biography is one of my favorites that I was able to read. Elder Oaks' Life Lessons Learned was another one that I really liked. Boyd K. Packer's Teaching
What
Diligence.
was it about their biographies that like connected with you that you were reading these after Ethne?
After Ethne died, yeah. It was interesting because I think reading about some of the experiences that they had when they were dealing with loss. And so, for example, with President Kimball, I actually connected a lot with when he would talk about his dad because his dad had lost multiple wives throughout his life.
Okay.
And dealing with that. And the big one from Elder Oaks' story, when he was young, his dad died. And he talked a lot about all these priesthood holders coming and giving his dad a blessing that he would be healed and everything would be okay. And then his dad died. And him learning that, all the faith and all the priesthood blessings can't counteract what God's will is. And that became a very important story to me and that realization. Because, when I found out that he was still alive, with all the faith I had, I prayed and I got other people to pray that she would survive, and she still didn't make it. And so, having that comfort, it was, for a while I struggled with the thoughts of the reason why she didn't survive is because I didn't have enough faith.
My faith was lacking.
And his story helped me realize that wasn't true. That no matter how much faith we have, if it's God's will and his plan, then it's going to move forward.
It's really hard because you read in the scriptures, knock and it shall be opened unto you, and ask what you want of the Lord and he will give it to you. Like you hear these scriptures and it's so much more nuanced than that. And it's really an act of faith to figure out the nuance, right? And go, okay, yes, but so how did you get there? You read the book that helped you to see other people that have stayed strong and true in their gospel and in their beliefs. Where were you then with all that? Because it's really, really hard. And you guys have been there months or weeks or years where you want to leave because you didn't get your miracle. How did you guys power through and endure?
It came to an understanding that there was things that, at least for me, there were things that I needed to figure out, things that I needed to learn. And there was another book that I really liked called, I think it's called The Uses of Adversity by, I think, Alfred Broderick. It's a transcription of a talk that he gave at a women's conference at BYU. And basically this whole talk, he talks about how people have to go through tragic things and why they have to go through tragic things. And I don't know if I've read it a half a dozen times, but I've read it multiple times. Every few years I pull it out and I read it again.
What's it called?
The Uses of Adversity. It's like 30 small pages. It's
Yeah,
you can knock it out in a half hour. It's completely worth it. And in fact, shortly after the accident, about the time I read this book, that's when I first got the idea of it's good that I'm journaling and that we have a blog, because I think we need to write a book so we can help other people. And that was a big part of the Uses of Adversity, is we need to go through things to help other people who are also going to be going through things. And so that's, for 10, 11 years after the accident, I've been talking about potentially doing this book and talking to Liz about doing this book. And And it was something I knew I wanted to do and something that I felt really strong that we need to do. In fact, when I first thought about it, I thought we need to pay extra close attention to what happens in the first year, because I think that's what we need to write about is the first year. But as the years have gone on, I realized we need to talk about how we're having different experiences with the same loss. And finally, a few years ago was when I finally came to the lesson. I said, we need to stop making excuses and we need to start writing this book. And it's been dramatically changed 3 or 4 times in the last 3 years to simplify it, because we want to make it an easy read. And I'm really excited for this final draft that we have. We're getting ready. We're hoping, our expectation is to have it released on September 15th. We're hoping to have it ready for pre-sale through Amazon. We're going to self-publish it through Amazon to have it available for pre-sale. We're still trying to wrap up a few things. But yeah, I've looked at it as we need to be able to help other people. And I think that's really what's helped me get through it, and why reading and listening to podcasts and journaling and even posting on a blog that Melissa's aunt made for us became so important to me, so therapeutic for me, because it meant that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing so that eventually I can come back around and help other people.
Yeah.
Something good needs to come from this, something beneficial, something powerful needs to come from this that we can do. We can take from this growth.
Melissa, do you feel the same way?
For me, I had to pull myself up because of hope. I had to find that hope from the promises of the gospel.
What do you feel like is the difference between hope and faith?
Faith is an action. It's taking those things that I hope for and doing something to help bring them to pass.
I love that. That's a great way to explain it. I think I'll steal that. Thank you.
There are still days when I ask if it really matters, if what we're doing actually has an impact, if losing Anthony means something outside of myself, if losing Thomas means something outside of us. And then we hear stories of people who have come back to the church and been through the temple because of our story.
Yeah.
Someone got baptized that my dad used to work with, within a few months after the accident, because she was following along in our blog.
It's still like you still even have days, right? It's like,
yeah,
it's just brutal.
My grandparents, when they were younger, they had an accident with a tractor, and they had a 5-year-old son who was killed as a result of that accident. And this was even before my mom was born.
Okay.
But the years later, they went to a funeral of a family friend, and whose son had passed away. He'd just been home from his mission, and he was doing some work out on the farm. He was moving some pipe, and a pipe hit an electrical line and electrocuted him.
Okay. Wow.
And they were at his funeral, and this man who loves my grandparents, respects my grandparents, asked my grandmother, when does the pain go away? And she effectively tells them, it doesn't go away. You just learn how to deal with it. You learn how to cope with it. And that's the thing. There's going to be moments of frustration. There's going to be moments of pain, and it's going to be difficult, and you're going to get angry. And I think I talk about this in the book. Like, sometimes when I'm praying, I was just yelling and venting at God because I was so mad and frustrated. But it's interesting because I feel like if there's anyone to vent to, he's the one, because he'll take it and you're getting that burden off your chest, and he's helping you take care of it, and he's understanding and empathetic. And
I think that's where the atonement comes in.
Yeah. And as people go, we can't yell at God. I yell at God, and I have to. And it's therapeutic.
It is therapeutic. I think too, we always talk about how Jesus wept, right? He knew he was going to raise Lazarus, but he still wept. And I feel like we take that as like he mourns with us, but I feel like he's also angry with us, right? Like when something bad happens to my kid, even if it's something they need to do or they need to go through, that doesn't mean that I'm not like happy about it, right? Like if my kid has to fail a test and has to go back and take it again and again, yeah, you need to go take that test again, but I'm not happy that you have to do it either. I'm not happy you didn't pass it the first time. I know you worked hard. I know you, and I feel like we kind of, put Jesus in that box with that story of like, oh, he mourns with us and he's sad when we're sad. Okay, but I also think that he's angry when we're angry, and he's frustrated for and with us. He feels our frustration, he feels our anger, and he's going, I get it. And I'm sorry. And you can, yep, I'm here. And just like you said, it is therapeutic, and we can vent to him, and he is there, being frustrated that this is the only way to do it. And I'm sorry. And I know it sucks.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Well, and you think about it with the relationship that we have with our kids. If our kids are mad about something and they need to yell, I totally want them to come to me and yell. Like, absolutely. And so, if we want that for our kids, then I'm sure God wants that from us too. If we need to yell and vent, he is there, and he's stronger and more capable of taking it than we are. So if I want my kids to do that for me, he's definitely willing to let us do that for him and do that towards him. And, you're going to have those moments every once in a while. And, the further along you get, the fewer and further in between those moments happen, because you are getting stronger. But that doesn't mean the pain goes away.
Yeah.
It's still there. You just get stronger and know how to deal with it better.
Yep. Yep. I think too, as you turn to Christ, right? He's going to bear your burdens with you, and that's the biggest thing, right? I mean, like you said, your wife's in the hospital, and those first 6 months after Ethne and your wife, all the things, it was like a super crash course on your relationship with God and why you're here and what you're doing, and all the things that you've taught and been taught your whole life is actually in practice now. And you're going, I didn't even have a clue. And now I'm learning so much quicker and faster than I ever wanted to. But yeah, I love that you can look back and almost with gratitude, right? Like it's how including Christ can sanctify an experience that should be, and it's very tragic, but you can also find that I learned so much, and me and my wife, we got so much closer. And
yeah, definitely.
I don't know. How do you keep the faith? Like, how do you stay strong when, especially nowadays, where I feel like we look at life and we see things on social media and everybody's got a great life?
So I mentioned how it really didn't hit me until about a year and a half later. And I had a moment that was very pivotal for me. It finally was starting to catch up with me, and then the dark thoughts were starting to enter a little bit more into my mind. And I found myself to the point of questioning God's existence. And it was interesting because I wasn't doubting whether or not the church was true. I felt like if God exists, then the church is true. But I'm not so convinced that God exists. Like I was at that point. And I have these doubts just kind of racing through my mind, and I'm driving to work one day thinking about it, and I'm like, I'm going to keep going to church, I'm going to keep doing the things, but these thoughts are all of a sudden kind of clouding my mind and bothering me. And as I'm thinking about it, this thought enters my head, and just this question, it says, well, what would you rather believe? Would you rather believe that this life is it, and that we're done, and that you're never going to see Ethne or your family again? Or would you rather believe that there's an opportunity for you to be together again? And I said, well, I would rather believe that we're going to be together again.
No brainer.
Yeah. And so the voice is like, then just believe that. And the rest will come along the way.
And that will be enough.
And it was very comforting. And then all of a sudden, a moment later, I felt really bad because I no longer felt like I could say believe, or I knew. I was now saying I believe. And so even though I felt relief and I was going to keep believing, part of me felt bad because I felt like I was downgrading my faith. I wasn't strong enough all of a sudden, but I was still going to move forward with that. And the very next general conference, there was a talk from Elder Holland, where he shares a story of a young man who tells him that he just believes, and that he doesn't quite have the testimony that he believes. And Elder Holland talks about giving this young man a hug and telling him how great it was that he just believed. And I started studying, and I realized that believing is a gift of the Spirit. And all of a sudden I realized believing is enough. I don't have to have that I know. All of a sudden after that talk and after doing some of my own independent studying, being able to believe took on a whole new meaning and a whole new level to me. And that really helped carry me moving forward, that I chose to believe. That's what I wanted to believe. And it was a gift that I was given from God to be able to believe. And I was going to move forward with that.
And moving forward, have you come to the place yet where you feel like you do know now, or are you still in a lot of ways a believer?
It's a combination of both. I definitely, because the scriptures say you don't get a testimony until after the trial of your faith. And I really feel like that moment was a big trial of my faith. And there's still moments, even now, where, because struggles never go away. As you advance in life, as you move forward, you continue to have struggles. In fact, it seems like the more you advance, the bigger the struggles become sometimes. And so I still have to have those moments where I'm just choosing to believe and say, okay, I believe that things are going to get better. Yeah, it's frustrating right now. Yeah, I'm ticked off right now. But I'm going to keep going and I'm going to keep believing. And eventually that testimony, that
knowledge.
that sure knowledge is going to come after that trial of my faith.
Oh my goodness. Well, Melissa and Lawrence, thank you so much for coming on and for being vulnerable and for sharing all the things and the miracles of just knowing God was there, and even the little things, right? And I love that you guys recognize that, and I feel like that's what gets people through, and those tender mercies that you actually recognize and verbalize. Okay, so what's the book called?
Our Stories. We're hoping to have it available for pre-order at least a month before. So sometime in August, sometime this month, we want to have it available for pre-order. But the expected purchase date, official release date is the 15th.
Wow, I love your guys' story. It lifts me up. I hope that your book reaches all the people and more that it needs to reach, to help them, because it is I mean, I can't even imagine, but especially for men, it is kind of this thing where in society, we just kind of like the man just kind of does it. And you have a whole, you're dealing with all the same emotions too. And, so I'm sure that this is going to fill a need there for people and get to who and what it needs. Oh, you guys, thank you so much. I so appreciate it. I really do. And good luck with everything. Thank you guys for your faith.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Bye.
Nice to meet you too.
Thank you so much for tuning in, and remember, God has not ceased to be a God of miracles. And if you have a miracle you'd like to share, we'd love to hear about it. Please reach out to us via our email at thedivineinourtime@gmail.com. Thanks. Have a great day.